Welcome, this is Najma Minhas with Global Village Space. I'm joined today by Leonid Savin. He is a Russian analyst based in Moscow. He is the editor-in-chief of Geopolitica. Leonid, thank you so much for giving me time today.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
Leonid, tell me, were Russians expecting what happened on February the 24th?
The issue of Ukraine is very difficult and complicated. It's not possible to speak of in two words because it started maybe after collapse of Soviet Union. And Ukraine chooses another way of development. And of course, the main problem started when pro-Western presidents came to power and started process of glorification of Nazism inside of Ukraine. You know, we have common history. We fight German Nazism during the Second World War. And unfortunately, in Ukraine, there was type of collaborators who was on side of Nazi Germany. And after 2005, these persons became glorified in Ukraine. They became like national heroes. And the situation became more dangerous after 2014, after coup in Ukraine, promoted and supported by the West, especially by United States. For example, Victoria Nuland personally participated in this coup and visited Kiev during these days. And after that, there was civil war started in Ukraine, especially on southeast, in Donbas region, and two regions of Ukraine proclaimed independence. And they started real civil war. And Ukrainian side used tanks, artillery, fighters against civilians, against own civilians. We can consider it like genocide because this population would like to speak Russian language. Problem was one of the questions.
So you're saying that the Russians, one of the issues when Russia, for example, mentions denazification, they're referring to the fact that Ukrainian government wasn't allowing eastern part of Ukraine to speak their language, for example.
Ukraine itself.
But Nazification is a very strong term. So, I mean, apart from not letting them speak their language, I mean, what are the elements when you say genocide? Because that's what Russia is claiming. So what were the elements that were happening on the ground in Ukraine where you can say it was genocide or Nazification was happening?
The problem is annihilation of Russian population was implemented on state level in Ukraine after 2014. There was formed so-called voluntary battalions of armed groups when people with nationalistic ideas, mainly neo-Nazis ideas, came to these groups, take arms and to fight against Russian population. It's really a very serious problem. Until now, these types of battalions still exist in Ukraine, and they fight against Russian army now. It's the most resistant type of highly ideologically motivated. They use symbols like Nazi Germany before symbol of divisions, SS, for example, the same Azov battalion, Donbas battalion in Ukraine. So it's very visible. And we see also that, for example, in Ukraine and United States, not voted against glorification of Nazism in United Nations. It's also very visible that Ukraine came on the very dangerous path. So Russia, especially President Vladimir Putin, decided to start this operation also because this process. And
so what made President Putin go in on February the 24th? Because Prime Minister Imran Khan was there during a state-level trip. What was the urgency of going in while a state leader was in the country as well? I mean, why did he feel that he had to go in on February the 24th? What was happening?
The problem is that Ukraine started more massive offensive in Donbas region just few days before. And 22 Donbass People Republic and Lugansk People Republic were recognized in Russia. But it's not Ukrainian government not stopped. They continue to use fire, artillery, and against the civil population in this region. And thousands of people from this new recognized republic came to Russia because of security reasons. And after that, Ukraine still concentrated troops close to border of these republics. And now we have information that Ukraine prepared really massive offensive there. And these documents are already captured by Russian army.
Okay. So Russian intelligence also claims that United States may be helping Ukraine develop nuclear weapons. Now, it doesn't make sense to me because United States was one of the guarantors behind the Budapest Declaration in 1994, which actually encouraged Ukraine to give up arms. And throughout its history generally, apart from supporting Israel, the United States has hardly supported any country to get nuclear weapons. So what evidence do the Russians have, and why would the United States support Ukraine?
After collapse of the Soviet Union, there were two groups inside of the United States. One group promoted ideas that Ukraine should have our nuclear weapon and to use Ukraine like counterbalance against Russia. Another group have an idea that only one country after the break of Soviet Union should has nuclear weapon, because Soviet Union was one country, so Russia need to have nuclear weapon only. Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Ukraine should to eliminate and give back it to Russia. And this idea of this group for the moment won in White House and State Department. But now I see that probably interest of second group is more on table inside of establishment of United States, because they see Ukraine like anti-Russia, and they provided conventional weapons to Ukraine. They organized bio-weapon labs inside of Ukraine, and probably there was a discussion that United States will provide some kind of scientific assistance or political umbrella and for development of this type of new nuclear weapon. So I think it was not blue for Vladimir Zelensky when he have speech on Munich conference on February 20, and he openly told that Ukraine may back to this idea to have our nuclear weapon just because of Russia.
Okay, so these, if we come to the sanctions that Russia has received subsequently after going into Ukraine, I mean, President Putin mentioned that he was expecting sanctions, and he said that, you know, Russia's used to this. But do you think Russia was expecting the number of sanctions and the enormity of sanctions that it received?
Against Russia imposed about 5,000 and some hundreds sanctions, personal sanctions against industry sector, etc. So now we see the most massive, like maybe not exist even during the Soviet Union times. And our Prime Minister, Mr. Mishustin, told that Russia was prepared for such kind of sanctions. It means that anyway we will start to redevelopment of our industry sector, our scientific approach, and etc. The most problem for the moment I see financial sector, because in some way we depend on Russia. For example, Visa and card not work abroad, and it's impacted on Russian citizens. Another way we see kind of hypocrisy of the West, because before West thought that we should to impose target sanctions against government, against some factories, especially military industrial sector. But now we see that sanctions imposed against Russian population itself. And for example, Meta company a week ago told that it will be allowed hate speech against Russians. So it's kind of elements of Russophobia in general and Western-centric approach. It's kind of scientific gnoseological racism of the West against Russia, and it's very dangerous. Today is Russia. What will be tomorrow? China, Pakistan, India, Arabic countries, Latin America, Africa, maybe. So I think that Russia will start more looking to the east. First of all, for countries like China, India, Pakistan, for cooperation. Of course, we are cooperating well with some countries of the Gulf, especially Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. They not supported Western sanctions against Russia.
Leonid, you might be looking more towards the East, but is the East able to oblige? I mean, that's the issue, right? Because when a country is under sanctions, no other international country is really supposed to be negotiating or working with that country. So it's very difficult. While you mentioned expecting military sanctions, there is already talk about the fact that maybe the Russian military have asked Chinese for some support on the military element, for military hardware. Is there anything to those rumors? I mean, do you know anything about this on ground?
Russia not asked China to military support. It was disinformation provided by Western media. The goal is very clear, just to stop any kind of cooperation between Russia and China. But now we are developing with China elements of financial mobility. For example, looking for new system of the payment and the transactions, and to use Union Pay of China and to use a new model of Eurasian Economic Union. To organize new joint effective systems that will be available worldwide. It will be alternative to Visa and MasterCard. So we are cooperating with China.
So one element is you're moving closer to China and countries other than the West. But do you think this is very much dependent on how successful you are in Ukraine? If you're not very successful and you get browbeaten by the West and Ukraine is freed from, and you don't get the Donbass region as independent, do you not think that will actually be counteractive for Russian power?
Yes, I think that victory in Ukraine is kind of moral imperative for the Russia. It's obvious. And I think that Russia will finish and will achieve goals anyway, because Russia in military sense is much better equipped and much experienced than the Ukrainian side. Of course, Ukrainian army got assistance from North Atlantic Treaty Organization, from United States, etc. But we see that Russia use precise strikes on weapon stocks, on military infrastructure of Ukraine, on places where mercenaries from different countries gathering to fight Russians. And every day Russia have more success in the Ukrainian territory. The main problem, I think, will be later, but when we need to do some kind of counter-terroristic operations inside of Ukraine, if they will still kind of guerrilla resistance against Russian troops. United States already...
Let's assume that Russia is able to get what it wants in Ukraine, which at this moment, let's assume it gets the independence of the Donbass region territories, and Ukraine says that they will agree to a neutral territory, right? Not to join NATO. So then how will Russia go and win hearts again? I mean, what is the strategy? Have people thought about what's the strategy to win hearts in Ukraine? Let's say if you're able to achieve your desired objectives in Ukraine?
Official position of Moscow is that the future of Ukraine depends on Ukrainian people. They should to vote and to find decision what to do. Like in Donbass region, in Lugansk region, it depends on people. Would like they back to Ukraine and still to be independent, and the same about other regions, because south east and on south, on north, most people were suppressed by neo-Nazi propaganda and government of Ukraine. Because in 2014 we see the massive riots and this too, and Ukrainian military sent troops just to suppress the people there. So they see Russian army in many cities like liberators. They welcome Russian troops. On the western Ukraine situation is different, of course, because there was another kind of civilization approach. They're more looking to the west always than left side. If we see Dnieper river like water line of that separate Ukraine into part, we see that this part from left bank of Dnieper river was always more pro-Russian. And historically, it was Russian territory. It was not Ukrainian. So, of course, there will be a difficult process of negotiation, and Russia always opened doors for diplomatic process.
Are you happy with the response that you have had from China, India, Pakistan? They all went neutral on the vote at the UNSC, at the UNGA General Assembly on Ukraine. Were Russians expecting anything more than neutrality?
Yes, I think it's a very good position at present real sovereignty of these countries, because they not follow any orders from the West, and Prime Minister Imran Khan already answered to representative of European Union that Pakistanis are not slaves of European Union. We should own decision about this situation, and of course, Russia also follows policy of non-interference into affairs of other countries, and it's very good position. It's kind of start of reorganization of the thinking. Before, even Russia dependent of American policy, dependent on West-centric policy, and now it's sign that these countries, Russia and India, Pakistan, China, some Latin American countries, some African countries, to choose path of real independence and sovereignty.
Do you see the global balance of power changing after this crisis?
Of course, yes. And if we look on articles of American scientists, also some European scientists, we see that many write that unipolar pro-American world order now is really finished. That started before because of Trump populism and because Joe Biden is really weak president. But if we see Ukrainian crisis in global context, we see that decline of American economy, decline of American diplomacy, problems in the side of European Union, depends of Russian energy supplies, and of course it will lead to another type of world order. Now we see the process of transformation, but like before, any type of global transformation brings some problems. Now we see this on Ukraine. Maybe there will be a serious crisis on Taiwan, not now, but later. Anyway, Taiwan will be joined to China, I think, anyway, in future. The same problem in some Middle East countries, relations in Syria, Turkey, Israel, Lebanon, Iran, etc. Some problems in Central American region. So yes, we see just real global transformation.
Okay,
and I hope that.
I'd just like to come to Pakistan and Russia. What do you see as a future relationship there? How can the two countries cooperate?
The leadership of both countries and people of both countries should use this window of opportunity to be close to each other in the economic sense, in political sense, in cultural sense, and of course, both countries are located in Eurasia. It's our common destiny to be close to each other. It's very strange why, for example, Pakistan or Russia cooperated with the United States more than to each other, because we have natural resources, we have manpower, that's the most important, and we can to achieve good benefits in different spheres of trade, economy, etc.
Do you think this is a viable opportunity given the fact that Russia is under Ukraine? I mean, is this why you refer to a window of opportunity? Is this the window of opportunity you're referring to? Because Russia is currently in a crisis, and you want Pakistan to stand up during this period.
We see that Ukrainian crisis will be finished soon. Anyway, Ukraine will be under the sphere of Russian influence also anyway, like neutral state or maybe like a security buffer of Russia. It's obvious, and Russia told about it many times before. During the presidency of Boris Yeltsin in the 90s, during the first presidency of Vladimir Putin, etc. It's obvious, and even well-known American scientists like John Mearsheimer, for example, told that Ukraine is a natural part of Russian security system, and Ukraine maybe get benefit to be with Russia. And we proposed to join Eurasian Economic Union. It was the reason why the West organized a coup in 2014, because they see Ukraine like a chance to undermine Russia.
How will you balance the Pakistan-India relationship, though? Because India, for example, imports over $6 billion worth of arms alone from Russia. So how do you see Russia balancing the India-Pakistan relationship?
India is also a partner of Russia, and now India looking how to organize new approach for cooperation with Russia, because just to avoid dollar system to buy Russian oil and other trade relations. Of course, we see hostility between India and Pakistan, and especially because of Kashmir and different historical issues. And but like in Ukraine, I think there will be decision for Kashmir region. Maybe for my idealistic view, it should be independent state of United Kashmir, independent, and maybe to serve like new platform for kind of new type of international organization. Because now we see that most of international organizations located on the West. If we talk about change of world order, we need to start to organize a new system of international organization, not like United Nations. We also need to think where it will be established.
Leonid, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for the questions, Najma. I hope it will bring more understanding for Pakistani readers of your journal, and also promote more good relations between Russians and Pakistanis.
Thank you so much. Thank you.